In criminal investigation, the most powerful word is pattern. Not coincidence, not tragedy, pattern. A pattern demands explanation. A pattern requires a cause. And when the same behavioral signature repeats across 11 individuals in multiple states, connected through classified government research facilities, the investigative conclusion is not that this is a run of bad luck. The Federal Bureau of Investigation has now entered a formal probe into the deaths and disappearances of at least 11 United States scientists. These individuals worked in classified aerospace, nuclear, and defense research. They held security clearances at high and top levels. They were connected institutionally through facilities including the Air Force Research Laboratory, Los Alamos National Laboratory, and NASA. Many of them are connected through a single commanding figure, General William Neal McCaslin, who oversaw funding for 80% of the United States military's most classified research programs before vanishing from his own home. True crime analysis at its most serious is the application of investigative methodology to factual patterns. And the factual pattern in this case is the most significant set of connected disappearances and deaths to emerge in the United States national security research community in recent memory. This analysis will trace the pattern with precision. It will examine what each individual case contributes to the overall picture and what that picture suggests about what is happening. It will look at the behavioral signatures that connect the cases, the institutional connections that map the relationships between victims, the nature of the research they were conducting, and why it has the kind of value that motivates serious actors to serious action, and the meaning of the FBI's decision to enter this investigation without the standard jurisdictional invitation that federal agencies typically wait for before becoming involved. The analysis will not speculate beyond what the evidence supports. It will not assign responsibility where responsibility has not been confirmed. But it will read the pattern honestly, because the pattern is there and it demands to be read. The behavioral signature that connects the majority of the missing individuals in this cluster is specific enough to be analytically significant, and it requires direct examination. When a person chooses to leave their home voluntarily, under any circumstances, they take the things they need to function in the world: keys to a vehicle or to return home, a phone for communication, a wallet for financial access, identification for any interaction with institutions, businesses, or law enforcement. These are not items that a mentally competent adult leaves behind by accident. They are items that a person who intends to return or who needs to navigate the world during their absence will have with them. In the connected cases of the missing scientists, the behavioral signature is consistent and repeated. Melissa Casillas, an administrator at Los Alamos National Laboratory, left her home, leaving behind both her work phone and her personal phone, which had each been factory reset before she left, erasing every contact and communication record they contained. She left her keys, she left her wallet. She was captured on surveillance camera, walking briskly away from her home in New Mexico, heading eastbound, and was never seen again. Monica Reza left behind the equivalent set of identifying objects before disappearing during a hike in the Angeles National Forest. She was with a companion. The companion turned, Reza waved, looked fine, and was gone within minutes. General McCaslin left without his cell phone, without his smartwatch, without his prescription glasses, without his keys. He took a firearm and wore hiking boots. His wife, in her call to emergency responders, did not describe a suicidal man. She described a man who she believed had made a deliberate decision not to be found. Stephen Garcia, the government contractor who built components for nuclear weapons, went for a walk and did not return, leaving behind his phone, his watch, his identification. This behavioral pattern, the deliberate leaving behind of all identifying objects before disappearing, does not match the profile of a spontaneous crisis. People in acute mental health emergencies do not typically perform factory resets on two phones before walking away. People who are going to harm themselves or who are fleeing a personal crisis do not methodically divest themselves of every traceable item in a pattern consistent across multiple individuals in multiple states. What the pattern is consistent with is one of two scenarios. The first is individuals who have made a deliberate, planned decision to disappear because they believe their lives are in danger and that disappearing is their best available option. The second is individuals who were taken by others who then removed or wiped their identifying materials to reduce the traceability of both the victim and the perpetrator. In the cases of those who died rather than disappeared, the behavioral signatures are different but equally consistent with an alternative to the officially assigned causes of death. Joshua LeBlanc's Tesla sat at the Huntsville airport for 4 hours before he burned in a crash. The vehicle, a Tesla, has a Sentry mode system that records what happens to and around the vehicle. That system documented the 4-hour airport stay. The question of what brought a 29-year-old nuclear scientist to an airport in the early morning hours for 4 hours with no apparent travel before dying in a fiery crash has not been answered publicly. Amy Eskridge's death was ruled a self-inflicted gunshot wound. She explicitly told multiple people in text messages that are on the record that she would not and did not commit suicide. She was a working scientist with an active government security clearance, actively engaged in projects with Homeland Security, functional and articulate in her communications with Frank Milbour up to 4 hours before her death. She was not, by any available account, a person in the kind of crisis that produces self-inflicted death. She was a person who had been subjected to a years-long harassment and attack campaign, and who had documented that campaign with photographs, witness testimony, and detailed written communication. Matthew Sullivan was scheduled to testify in a congressional whistleblower hearing specifically about UAP intelligence within the military before his death. He died before he could testify. The pattern of that specific circumstance, a person with sensitive intelligence information dying before giving formal testimony, is one that intelligence professionals recognize as a category of event that warrants specific investigative attention. The institutional map that connects these individuals is not superficial, and understanding it is essential to understanding why the FBI has treated this as a national security matter rather than a collection of unrelated local incidents. General General McCaslin's position in the military research hierarchy was exceptional. As the commanding officer of the Air Force Research Laboratory and as the individual who oversaw funding for 80% of the military's special access programs, he was not merely a senior officer with administrative responsibilities. He was, in the description used by former FBI agents who have addressed this case, a walking hard drive of highly classified information. Every program he funded, every project he oversaw, every research direction he authorized or discontinued, every personnel decision he made about who had access to what, all of that was contained in McCaslin's operational knowledge. He was not merely aware that these programs existed. He had the specific content knowledge about their direction, their progress, and their results. That is the most valuable kind of classified information there is. The Air Force Research Laboratory, which appears in the institutional histories of multiple victims, is one of the primary research arms of the United States Air Force. It conducts and funds research in areas ranging from advanced materials to directed energy systems to propulsion technology to information operations. It is the institution through which the government's most advanced technology development is channeled toward military application. Monica Reza, the scientist who vanished on a hiking trail, received her funding from AFRL for her work on the advanced heat-resistant alloy called Manderley. Melissa Casillas worked administratively at AFRL as well as at Los Alamos. Stephen Garcia's contractor work for nuclear weapon components connected to AFRL. Los Alamos National Laboratory in New Mexico is one of the country's foundational nuclear research facilities, established during the Manhattan Project and maintained through the Cold War as a center of nuclear weapons development and related research. Its current work spans nuclear weapons maintenance, energy research, and fundamental scientific research across multiple disciplines. The concentration of multiple victims in New Mexico, including Casillas and others, and the connection of their work to Los Alamos and AFRL creates a geographic and institutional cluster that investigators find meaningful. The Wright-Patterson Air Force Base connection, noted specifically by former FBI supervisory agent John Nance, is worth examining in detail. Wright-Patterson in Dayton, Ohio, has a documented history in the context of advanced materials research and has appeared repeatedly in congressional testimony about UAP-related research programs. The material science research that Monica Reza was conducting into memory metal, whose properties have been connected by experts in congressional testimony to material allegedly recovered from a crash in Roswell, New Mexico in 1947 and delivered to Wright-Patterson, places her work in direct relationship to the most sensitive thread of classified research running through the American defense research community. Whether the UAP connection is taken seriously or not, the institutional reality is this: Wright-Patterson, AFRL, Los Alamos, and NASA are connected through funding streams, personnel exchanges, and research continuity that places multiple victims within overlapping institutional networks. McCaslin oversaw the funding structures for the programs that employed several of the missing and dead. His disappearance is therefore not merely one more case in the pattern. It is potentially the central case, the one that connects the others, because he was the node through which all of their institutional relationships passed. Subscribe now. This investigation is moving at a pace that makes every update significant. You need to be here for the next one. The directed energy weapon dimension of this investigation requires analytical engagement that is careful, specific, and grounded in documented reality, because it is the element most likely to be dismissed and least deserving of dismissal. A Russian operative was detained in the United States in possession of a directed energy weapon. This was disclosed in a congressional hearing in 2024. The technology exists. Its operational characteristics have been described in testimony by intelligence professionals with direct knowledge of its use. It is not a science fiction concept. It is a deployed intelligence tool whose documented use against American targets, specifically diplomatic and intelligence personnel, is the basis for the ongoing investigation and treatment of what has been called Havana syndrome. The directed energy weapon described in connection with Amy Eskridge's case is in the thermal rather than acoustic category, distinguishing it from the acoustic variant that has been reported by some Havana syndrome sufferers. The thermal variant uses a focused microwave energy beam emitted from a portable device that can be mounted in a vehicle and directed through building materials at a specific target. The effects are physical: burns, neurological disruption, gastrointestinal effects, central nervous system damage. They are consistent with what Eskridge documented through photographs, through witness testimony of coworkers who identified the weapon type in real time, and through the assessment of a physician who reviewed the photographic evidence. The counterintelligence analysis of what Eskridge's harassment campaign represents requires engaging with a specific question: what kind of actor can maintain a years-long, multi-method harassment operation against a single target in the United States, deploying vehicle surveillance, systematic hacking, and directed energy weapons while evading counterintelligence detection for the duration? The answer to that question, when framed honestly, has a limited number of candidates. A state-level intelligence service has this capacity. Russia's GRU and SVR, China's MSS, and a small number of other national intelligence services have the personnel, the resources, the technical capabilities, and the operational security to conduct sustained multi-year harassment campaigns of this kind. A large private actor with intelligence community equivalent resources could potentially do the same, though the sustained duration and operational sophistication visible in Eskridge's case makes private actor origin less likely. The additional possibility, noted by Frank Milbour in his communications with investigators and members of Congress, is that the actor or actors behind these operations may have achieved some degree of access to or influence over law enforcement and investigative processes at local, state, and federal levels. Milbour's description of Eskridge's experience with the FBI, in which she engaged with the Bureau for 3 months over her concerns before being told the FBI did not have jurisdiction, is consistent with either institutional failure or institutional penetration. Either possibility is serious. The specific operational tradecraft visible in the harassment campaign against Eskridge, the way it was designed to appear to outside observers unfamiliar with its specific methods to be consistent with the behavior of a paranoid or mentally disturbed individual rather than a person under genuine sustained attack, is the kind of sophisticated design that intelligence professionals recognize. Former British intelligence officer Frank Milbour's recognition of that design, his understanding that the harassment was constructed to ensure that Eskridge's reports would be met with skepticism rather than investigation, is part of why she specifically chose him as her trusted contact. His background in intelligence operations meant he had the framework to understand what was being done to her and to assess it correctly. The question of whether any component of this operational infrastructure extended to the other cases in the connected cluster, whether the same actor or actors who targeted Eskridge were running parallel operations against Reza, Casillas, Garcia, LeBlanc, or others, is one of the central questions the FBI investigation is positioned to address through the counterintelligence tools that are not available to local law enforcement. The analytical synthesis of the connected cases of dead and missing United States scientists produces a picture that is disturbing in proportion to how clearly it is read. The pattern is documented. Multiple scientists connected to the most sensitive research facilities in the American Defense Research Complex have died or disappeared in circumstances that are individually questionable and collectively inexplicable as random events. The behavioral signatures across the disappearance cases are consistent with each other in ways that argue against coincidence. The institutional connections through the Air Force Research Laboratory, Los Alamos, NASA, and the commanding figure of General McCaslin create an organizational map of overlapping relationships. The specific research areas that several of the dead or missing were pursuing: advanced propulsion, novel materials, anti-gravity technology, directed energy systems, nuclear propulsion, represent concentrations of strategically valuable knowledge. The value of that knowledge to any state or private actor that understood what these individuals had developed or were developing is not theoretical. It is military advantage. It is commercial advantage. It is the kind of scientific and technical capability that alters the balance of power between nations and between competing technological interests. Actors with the motivation and the resources to acquire that knowledge by any available means exist. They are documented. Their prior operations against American research targets are on the record. What the FBI's entry into this investigation signals is institutional recognition of what individual investigators and congressional advocates have been saying for some time. These cases cannot be properly investigated by local law enforcement agencies working in isolation. The connections between them are federal in nature. The potential actors behind them are federal and international in their scope. And the specific research areas involved implicate national security in a way that requires federal counterintelligence resources and legal authority. The former FBI supervisory agent who has addressed this case publicly has noted that the correlations visible in this cluster are extremely disturbing from a counterintelligence perspective. A former Air Force intelligence officer who was about to testify at a congressional whistleblower hearing on UAP intelligence died before he could do so. Multiple researchers connected to classified programs within a single commanding officer's sphere of oversight have disappeared using the same behavioral signatures. A scientist who documented a years-long harassment campaign that included directed energy weapon attacks was found dead from a reported self-inflicted wound she had specifically told multiple people she would not inflict. The families of the dead and missing are largely silent. They are, by the accounts of those who know them, afraid. That fear, expressed consistently across multiple families in multiple states in connection with multiple separate cases, is itself a signal. Luis Elizondo, whose work in UAP disclosure has made him one of the most visible advocates for government transparency about classified aerospace research, has weighed in on the pattern of missing scientist cases. His involvement as the dimension of a person with documented access to classified information about the programs these scientists were connected to, bringing perspective that neither local law enforcement nor the general public has access to. What this investigation has in front of it is a cluster of connected cases involving individuals who possess knowledge of extraordinary strategic value, who died or disappeared under suspicious circumstances, who in several cases explicitly communicated before their deaths or disappearances that something was wrong, and whose families are too afraid to speak publicly about what they believe happened. That is not a mystery without a solution. That is a solution waiting for an investigation with the tools and the authority to find it. The FBI now has that investigation open. Congress is applying the pressure that keeps it open, and the evidence that these individuals left behind, the texts, the photographs, the documented witness testimony, the communications with people who have brought it forward at personal risk, is the record that the investigation will work from. 11 scientists, at minimum, the most sensitive research facilities in the country, the most classified programs in the American defense apparatus, a commanding general who is himself now missing, and a pattern that a true crime analyst reading the available facts without the institutional filter that has kept this from the national conversation it deserves cannot explain as anything other than what it appears to be. This investigation is not over. It has barely begun.